Hey everyone, this is Casey from This Epic Life. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Last week we kicked off the theme of community and inviting others into our success versus taking everything on ourselves. I call that the affliction of I got this. And I wanted to share just a couple more thoughts on this week. We need to notice when we separate ourselves from others. We are biologically wired for connection, but our inner child may hold back by protecting our heart. We repeatedly affirm, if it is to be, it's up to me. We can feel all the souls we travel with washing in and rolling out like the tide. Connection happens, then it fades or gets reinvented. I notice my own tendencies to lean harder on others when I'm under duress or in breakdown. Also, when things are all peachy keen, it's way easier to share time with others. But there's a massive chunk of the spectrum between the lows and the highs where we can practice opening our hearts, receiving love and support, and also giving plenty of support. I got this blows over that opportunity for connection and reinforces our suffering. We get back to work, back to tinkering with small stuff, and back to hiding. What if we practice today? Consider starting a conversation with, you know what I'm afraid of? Are we in the trust tree? I'll go first. You know what I'm afraid of? I'm afraid of a political system motivated by divisiveness and media profiting from outrage and clickbait. I'm afraid of what that does to our connection to the truth, that it's our diversity that makes us great. That's a little bit about what this episode today is about. I'm also afraid that if I don't share my truths, my feed will stay some vapid slipstream of I got this, like so much of social media. We can't build a soul-powered business or a family or a life out of selfies. We are an integrated system of consciousness and infinite potential. So instead of I got this, let's practice we got this. If you're curious to learn more about this movement that we're launching at This Epic Life, check out this page. It's www.ignite.thisepiclife.com/ripple. That's www.ignite.thisepiclife.com/ripple. Thanks so much for listening, and let's get into this week's episode.
Ooh, this beat is epic.
Welcome to This Epic Life podcast, where we explore the connection between building a conscious life and building a conscious team or a conscious business. We also break down 3 powerful permissions with our guests. These would be the permission to chill or to be with what is. Next, we look at the permission to feel all the feels. Finally, permission to glow in the dark, which is to embrace our greatness. This week's guest is an excellent example of this. I will be your host. My name is Christopher Carter. My friends call me KC. I'm a coach for founders and executives and meditation teacher for organizations. And now let's meet this week's guest. Netta Jenkins is a force of nature. She's currently on family leave from her position as VP of Global Inclusion for Ask Applications, a branch of publicly traded IAC. She welcomed her first child in April. When Netta was in high school, her parents moved into a wealthy, predominantly white community. That experience, and much of the resistance and racism her family encountered, helped shape Netta's voice as a champion of inclusion for all. Netta is a woman of color by birth, but when you hear her speak, you suddenly believe there could be solutions that include everyone. In addition to her many responsibilities with Ask Apps, Netta has spoken at over 50 industry events, panels, and conferences in the last year alone. I had the pleasure of coaching Netta around her thought leadership and positioning framework. But she doesn't stop there. Netta has always been an entrepreneur at heart and recently launched Dipper, a site for professionals of color to review their workplace in a transparent environment. She's also finishing her first book and has been invited to speak at Google when she returns to work in September. Do you see what I mean here? Force of nature. I mentioned she just had a baby, right? Netta challenges the predictable assumptions that we have to choose between family or a career, or between a great role within a successful company or impact beyond its walls. This week's episode looks at what's possible when we unleash our voice everywhere. In this conversation, we cover how critical it is to build strong relationships everywhere and to ask for help when needed. We also cover how to create impact inside and outside your organization without being viewed as a threat or a flight risk. We talk about the typical barriers to an inclusive workplace and how to overcome them. We get into Netta's mindset that expands all possibilities into both and. This is what has made Netta so successful in a relatively short amount of time. We also cover being brave and letting your employer or your clients in. Netta shares a story of how she was afraid to share her pregnancy when she was up for a big promotion and how everything worked out better than she could have planned. I'm so excited to share Netta Jenkins' story. This Epic Life presents Netta Jenkins. You sound amazing as always. Just say hello, my name is Netta.
Hello, my name is Netta.
Oh my God, you sound incredible. I sound incredible. This feels incredible.
You're so funny.
Netta Jenkins, I'm so excited to catch up with you on This Epic Life. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to chat with you. How are you?
I'm doing pretty great. I was just starting to reflect about how much stuff you've taken on over the past basically 18 months since we worked together.
Right.
Why don't you?
And a lot.
Yeah. Why don't you kind of give me a snapshot or give our listeners a snapshot of where you are literally today between these kind of chapters of your career and kind of what's transpired for you over the last 18 months?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So currently I'm Vice President of Global Inclusion for Ask Applications and Mosaic Group. So Ask Applications is our browser business and Mosaic Group are our mobile businesses. I'm also working on a women empowerment book. I'm on parental leave right now as well, so trying to get a lot of work done.
When did you have your baby? Your baby's just born.
Yes. I had my baby on April 29th, 2019.
Oh my gosh, congrats. What's his name?
Thank you. His name is Peyton Eric Jenkins. So we flipped it around. So my husband's name is Eric Peyton Jenkins.
Okay.
And his brothers would tease him with the name, the middle name Peyton. And I'm like, that's such a cool name. It's like, hey, Peyton's coming through. Like, he's handsome, he's strong, you know. So yeah, my son's name is Peyton Eric Jenkins.
So new baby, new title, job title. Then this week, you blew up LinkedIn with an announcement of something new you created. So what's with that?
The new company, it's called Dipper. Pretty much, it's a safe space for professionals of color to leave their reviews about their current employer or past employers. And we do share the reviews anonymously, of course. Folks will be able to see which company those reviews are for, and it'll, better help them guide them through selecting the right companies for them that are most inclusive. I think, there's a lot of lip service, a lot of organizations that are saying, hey, we're working on diversity and inclusion initiatives, but there's a lot of people oppressed. There's deep systemic gaps still occurring. And of course, change doesn't happen overnight. But when you have multiple groups of people giving the same review of the same experience, then that's an issue. And we're going to be highlighting that. There's definitely some great moments as well. There's some proud things, some great companies doing great work, and that's also highlighted in some of the reviews as well. But to be honest, there's actually more negative reviews than positive reviews, but we'll be definitely launching that. We're not going to leave companies hanging, of course. We'll definitely share some solutions to help them be more inclusive and help them change those issues within their organization that are affecting their employees that are professionals of color.
I'm just wondering what your career is going to look like when you're just a few years into this parenting thing, because like just a couple months in, you're totally killing it on your career in addition to raising a baby, because a lot of our listeners are people like me, people with families, and there's a whole lot of how do you balance the professional aspirations. But I've always experienced you as a very kind of intrinsically driven person. You have a lot of passion and instinct for what you're here to do. Does that resonate with you?
You're definitely right. But I have to also thank those that have been around me. When we start talking about parenting, balancing work life and motherhood, I have the support of my husband. I have the support of my mom, my mother-in-law. And so I think one of the things I've never been afraid to do throughout my whole life is ask for help. It's so important to do that, and that is part of why, I feel I'm in a successful path, because there are people around me that are truly supportive and helping me out as well. So I can't do it all alone. That's the main advice I give folks. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
None of this happens as a solo act. Let's kind of go back to last year a little bit, because I feel like I've watched this juggernaut blow up on LinkedIn, and just seeing all the things you're into with speaking at different companies. I know you're speaking at Google in September. Were there any particular things that happened last year that were helpful in just kind of getting really consistent and focused around your message? Because I feel like you've stayed really true to some of the work that we did together. Anything come up for you around that?
Yeah, I think a part of it is honesty, right? I've always been super honest about diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity. I talk, about systemic gaps. I talk about how we can break them. I like coming up with actionable steps. I think there's a lot of people out there that like to complain about situations.
Yeah.
I'm more of a problem solver. I'm like, okay, there's an issue, but let's talk about the solution. How can we solve this? And I think that has really helped me out tremendously. And of course, utilizing social media. LinkedIn is definitely a very powerful platform and building relationships. I think a lot of people think, okay, well, on LinkedIn, if I just make these connections and I have about maybe 10,000 connections, that's all I need. You have to interact and engage with people online. And that's what I continue to do, and really just preach my message around diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging. And it really stuck and resonated for people. And because of that, more organizations were reaching out to me to speak and share my thoughts and my views on this very topic.
I feel like the world was ready for Netta Jenkins to blow up some paradigms. Take me back to your experience of high school, because I remember you kind of grew up in kind of an affluent area.
So I grew up in Rhode Island in a town called Johnston, and it's predominantly, I would say, predominantly Caucasian neighborhood and pretty affluent. We were the only African Americans in my neighborhood at that time, when I was, much younger, of course. My mother was a nurse at the time. She had also 3 businesses that she was running, clothing boutiques. And then my father was a police officer. And so we were doing pretty well, but we definitely experienced a lot of racism. I remember at the age of 8, my mom, being outside, and this always takes me up when I think about it, but we're outside and, a neighbor comes by. She pretty much said to my mom, blacks don't belong in my neighborhood.
Wow.
And this is when we had just moved in that particular neighborhood, and she spit in my mom's face.
Wow. Blacks don't belong. Spit on your neighbor's face.
In my neighborhood.
Jesus.
And she spit in my mom's face, yeah. The age of 7 or 8 years old. And I just remember standing next to my mom, being so angry, but also confused. And my mom didn't do anything. She didn't do anything. And that really, really, had me very angry. And then fast forward, we were pulled over in our driveway before, and in our driveway.
Was it right? Speeding? What could you possibly be doing in your driveway?
Yeah, wheelies, and my mom was literally parked in our driveway, or pulling in rather, and then she had parked, and the police officer stopped her, and he comes over to the car, and he's like, "Ma'am, are you lost?" My mom's like, "No, I'm not lost. I'm home. This is my land." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And so I remember my mom looking at me, and she's like, "These are just things that we're going to be facing." And I didn't really understand it that much, not until I got to, middle school, high school, and I was facing some discrimination and racism. And I remember one kid saying to me, "I heard Africans climb on trees. Why don't you show us how you climb on trees?" It was just really, really mean things. Of course, not every single person in the school was like that. I had amazing friends, but there were those few bad apples that really ruined it for, my experience. I remember, going home to my mom and telling her about this, and she's like, listen, I didn't bring you in this world to cry about things. I brought you in this world to, create change, essentially. And that stuck with me my entire life.
Yeah.
The day my mom told me that, I started plotting.
Gave me chills.
And thinking about ways. Yeah, I started plotting and thinking about ways I would solve this issue. So I'm like, how do I solve this issue of like people being aware in my school that it's not right to say those things? How do we talk more about discrimination? Because we weren't really having those conversations when I was in middle school. I'm in a predominantly Caucasian school. I'm one of 3 African Americans. We're not really having those conversations. Even when Black History Month would come up, it would just be like, oh, Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. And I'm like, but there's more, to Black history. And why aren't we talking about this? Or there's more things that Martin Luther King did. Why are we just showing a picture and then that's it? So I started tackling those hot issues, and I remember telling my mom, I said, well, I'm going to run for president of the freshman class. And she said, you go for it. I didn't think I was going to win, of course, but I started building relationships. So there, from a young age, that's when I learned to build meaningful relationships with people so that they would be able to trust me, trust the viewpoints that I had, and just the energy and passion I had for all people of feeling like they were included. And that was a big thing for me. So ran for president. I ended up winning. My slogan was vote for Sam Netta. She'll make the high school better.
Was it Betta with a B-E-T-T-A to rhyme with Netta?
Yeah, with a B-E-T-T-A. Yeah.
Nice.
And that stuck. And so it was funny because I remember one of my teachers saying, okay, Netta, well, your big job is to fold flowers for the freshman float. And I remember laughing. Like, I laughed so hard. And I said to him, I was like, no. I'm not going to just be folding flowers for the freshman float. I said, I'm going to be creating change. He laughed. And I sure did. I got the news station to our high school. We had a huge Black history performance. We started talking about inclusion when inclusion was not a thing. Inclusion is a buzzword now. We started talking about inclusion then. And really, my key thing was, listen, everyone feels excluded at one point in their life, right? There were some folks on the cheerleading team that didn't feel like they were included.
First of all, part of your story reminds me of, have you seen the movie Napoleon Dynamite?
I did.
It's kind of a classic, but when Pedro defeats Summer Wheatley for class president, it was a total upset. What I heard was that the majority of the Caucasian population at the school saw no problem when they were an absolute majority, and the little tiny offerings or the tiny bones they threw for Black History Month, it was, all of that was fine because it was predominantly white. But when you have a different perspective, getting a voice and being able to use that voice, it becomes something that they need to address, or at least need to entertain or have the conversation. That's really, really powerful. And I love how consistent you've been with the focus on inclusion over the diversity and inclusion, because I heard you say that in your new job title. You're the VP of, is it Global Inclusion?
Yep.
That's the most badass title I could think of for Netta Jenkins. Talk to me a little bit about the focus on inclusion rather than diversity and inclusion. How do you kind of parse those out?
Well, with inclusion, I start thinking of how can I bring every single person to the table? When I think of diversity, I think of people from underrepresented groups, LGBTQ, people of color, abled bodies as well. So I do think of those groups, but when I think of inclusion, I think of no matter where you're from, what background you're from, your social economic status, you should feel included, right? You should feel like you have a place to grow, like you have a space to thrive within the workplace, like your voice is heard, no matter who you are. And so that has always been a core focus for me. So when I do put together different programs, I'm seeking information from the employees within the organization. I want to hear from them as to what are some things that you guys want to talk about. If we're talking about parenting, well, I'm not going to only solely focus on just women. There are stay-at-home fathers as well. There are fathers that, single fathers, and taking care of their kids too. So I want to really make sure that I'm painting the full story.
I have to address the elephant in the room right now with you, Netta.
Right.
Can I share something that I just absolutely love and adore about you? Are you comfortable with that?
Go for it.
Okay, cool. It's that you come at everything from a place of abundance and not scarcity. You made the distinction between there's a lot of people in the space, and understandably, because there's so much wound and turmoil and chaos and confusion in the space, that they kind of get mired in the how do we fix what's broken? And so they're focused on the broken. And I'm not saying that diversity is directly linked to that, but they might end up taking an agenda of how do I get more diversity in terms of just hitting bare minimums of quote unquote quotas or something like that.
Exactly, just the numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
But where you're coming from is inclusion for all, not just African Americans, not just women, but you mentioned even, the white privileged kids on the cheerleading team needed some more inclusion. And I just feel like that kind of hardcore stand that you have for inclusion for all is such a powerful piece of your platform. And I think it just finally clicked with me why that works so well and why that's so needed in the world right now. Thank you for being that for people, because it actually gives me a kick in the ass. I can work harder to be more inclusive of others than just looking out for myself or looking out for some perceived minority.
You have to genuinely love people.
Guilty as charged. How about you? Do you actually love people or are you faking? Do you love?
I do. No. I genuinely love people. It's funny because when I was a kid, I used to cry for the world. Right?
Oh, yeah.
I would see some...
Like Jesus.
Yeah. I would see someone going through pain. I don't care who you are, or where you're from, and it would hurt me. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like if I could cure that person's heart, if I could do something to make them happy.
Where do you find the strength these days to stay in that heart open to all, but also the strong heart to hold space for all of the darkness? Because I think a lot of people want to go fetal ball right now.
Yeah, I'm going to be very honest with you. It's very, very hard. It can actually take a large toll on you. And it's funny because I was speaking with a couple people at a conference before, other D&I professionals, and we were all talking about how sometimes at night you cry. Right? You literally cry because these issues that we're trying to tackle aren't easy. Not everyone is on board with them. Not everyone's going to have the same want for inclusion or diversity or equity. And then you hear of these things continuously happening within organizations. It takes a toll over you.
Sure.
So I do pray, I do pray a lot. So I do find sort of that center in my life. But also I think it comes with support. I lean on, of course, my husband. I lean on the people within my organization, from the CEO to the entry-level person within my organization. I literally talk to every single person to just make sure that I have my sanity there. No matter how I'm feeling, if I'm feeling a bit off one day, I'll pull someone to the side and just literally vent to them about it.
Since you went to the deep honesty place, are you open to some vulnerable questions here?
Let's do it.
What are you afraid of as it relates to your work, this topic, these kind of big forces that are all kind of bubbling up to the surface? What makes you cry at night, or what are you afraid of?
I think what I'm afraid of is just continuously hearing these negative stories happening within organizations. I think, there's a lot of organizations that say, we're inclusive, we care. And then you see reviews from the Dipper. We've received so many reviews.
And this is just in 3 days, right?
Yeah, just in 3 days
right.
of launching, my company. I'm looking at hundreds of reviews, more negative than positive, unfortunately, and tears started rolling down my eyes. Goodness, this is a company I thought that was doing so well. They've won diversity awards. They're always at these conferences talking about diversity and inclusion. And here you have about 10 to 15 professionals of color from that particular organization pretty much saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, it's so striking. And I think that's one of the things that I'm most afraid of now that I've started this.
Well, you opened up the channels and
Yeah, I started this company, Dipper. Now Netta, there's a lot of work to be done because I'm constantly doing work within my organizations, and the people within my organization are so passionate, and we're doing well as a company from a D&I standpoint. Doesn't mean that other organizations are doing well too. Doesn't mean that the professionals of color at other organizations are happy or thriving or growing. Many of them are facing microaggressions. I mean, there's a lot happening, and that's my fear. My fear is just, oh my gosh, am I going to be depressed? After constantly reviewing these things, am I going to continue having this passion and this energy, not ever wanting to stop doing what I do?
It's powerful that you're opening up a channel for the stories to be shared. There's huge value in that, especially transparently. Like, thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Giving voice to all of that. I love that you pray so much because I feel like it calls in your spiritual reinforcements to expand your heart, expand your ability to be with all of it, because it's the full spectrum of darkness to light, it seems like. What are any of the stories that you've seen that give you hope or encourage you?
Some of the stories that I have seen, folks have said, one particular company, the onboarding is amazing. Once they had started, they were able to grow tremendously. Their manager in the organization really took pride in asking them, where do you want to be? How can we help you get to where you want to be? And actually acting on that. I thought that was pretty powerful because a lot of people want to see that.
Yeah.
You need that in order to grow. And honestly, that's the type of support I had. And that's why I'm at the level that I'm at today.
It's because people took an interest to help you develop.
Exactly. Yeah, great people. They wanted to see me grow, and they helped me along the way. Folks that were at executive levels that had impact.
When we worked together last year, another guest on this podcast, Deb Josephs, who's the Chief People Officer of IAC Apps or Ask Apps, and then now she's over at NCC. She took a definite interest in you and loved your message and really got you involved in inclusion. Is that correct?
She sure did. She's amazing. Mentor, friend, mom.
Shiro.
She has been so supportive of my career from day one. And I think an exceptional manager, what they do is they find out, what do you want to do? And that was some of the questions that she had asked me. She's like, I was recruiting at the time, and she's like, Netta, what are some of your passions? What do you love to do? What gets you fired up? And I started sharing my story with her, and she's like, well, have you thought of diversity and inclusion? I'm like, hey. So, that's essentially something I've been doing my entire life, even though I didn't have that title. She really dug deep to understand what moved me. And then after that, she supported me throughout my career. I was a finalist for the Women in IT Awards. This was this year. She was there at that table.
Yeah,
she
of course.
Supported me. We took pictures.
I remember she was talking to me about coaching around. I'm a rhetoric major. That's my background in rhetoric. And she said, let's talk about some messaging frameworks so I can speak the gospel outside the organization and inside the organization, just get things really tight. And we started talking about that project, and she came back to me. She said, only if you work with Netta too, because I look at that now as it wasn't because you needed my help, certainly. It was because she wanted to give you the access to any tools or resources she had to really develop your thing. And it was such a pleasure because as we started working and talking through some of these things, you started applying them instantly. Like you were out speaking a ton on every single panel that there was in the city on this topic. And then traveling to do it, to kind of see where you've taken that over the past year has just been really, really inspiring. I mean, what do you attribute that to?
Well, I have to thank you. I got to start off by thanking you, right? Because in all honesty, we had a good amount of sessions, and you really helped and you coached me as well. And I told you, hey, I'm interested in, really speaking on behalf of the company and talking about our initiatives and talking about diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging, and what that means, and how it's so impactful in our day to day. You definitely helped tremendously, and I thank you for that. It really goes back to that support. It goes back to building those relationships and to ensure that you have those people saying, you can do it. You can do it. Like, go get them. And because of those coaching and the support, I did about, it was like over 50 something speaking engagements last year.
Wow,
it was
50.
An insane amount of
Working full time, getting
never would have thought. Remember when you started coaching me? I never would have thought
you had a couple,
that I would be doing that many speaking engagements.
But you also did it while literally launching the inclusion function at that organization. So you had a lot of professional demands. What I attribute that to is your willingness to receive support was a total differentiator, because there's some people that show up to coaching and they do the thing and they sign up for it. They feel good about paying for it. And they, I don't want to say they phone it in, but they aren't as committed to receiving and then immediately implementing everything that's discussed. That's what I think one of your superpowers is just your ability to kind of receive and pay forward and to practice and to tweak and to, just kind of play the game.
Yeah, and that's what I say. If you are really striving to do something, you have to zone in on it and start applying it to your life. After we did the coaching, I had to get the work done too. I can't just sit on my butt and think, hey, I got coached, so now all the gigs are coming my way. It's like school, you go, you get your degree and your education, but you have to still market yourself, or else you're not going to land a job. And that's what I had to do with school. And so if that type of dedication or persistence is in you, you can move mountains.
How do you think about building your influence and your platform outside of an organization? Because a lot of people, this goes back to your abundance thing a little bit for me, because a lot of people hold these things separate. Like, I could either have this cushy corporate gig, quote unquote, or I can have this dream influence outside on the internet and other places. You've definitely done a great job of navigating both. How do you think about that balance of building kind of an external brand for your message while staying responsible and honoring all your commitments inside the organization?
The first thing is you have to really dig deep and understand, okay, what is it that I want to do? If you are at a full-time opportunity, how does that highlight or benefit the other things that you're passionate about in life? How do you merge the two? So I had to think about that first. Step 2 was sharing with leadership at my organization what I was passionate about, what drove me. Mm-hmm. And then once I had the green light with them saying, we want you to be excited about what you do here, and we want you to merge the two. Once I knew, okay, that's okay, I have the green light to do that, it was history after that. So I think a lot of the times people are very nervous to do it because their jobs or the companies that they work for are not on board with it. They're not in support of that or them. So I definitely think it's key to get that buy-in.
Can you share the story of you sheepishly telling them that you had a baby on board? I love it because you're so outspoken on LinkedIn. Like I picture the LinkedIn post, newsflash, I'm pregnant, but you kind of played it a different role. But share that story.
Well, my husband and I, we were trying for some time, and then boom, voila, we ended up getting pregnant. And when I learned that I was pregnant, I was super excited, but then I was also extremely nervous and scared. The reason being is because I read so many different articles. This is, I'm in this line of work, right? You hear the horror stories on a daily basis of women that are pregnant and losing out on being promoted or opportunities or being demoted. And so I was extremely nervous. I knew that there was talks of the company wanting to promote me. And once I got pregnant, I said to myself, oh, there's no way that they're going to promote me now. I'm going to be going on leave. I'm not going to be doing any work, for them at that time. Why would they even want to promote me? Because I had that fear, I actually didn't share the awesome news with my job until it was like maybe 2 months or 3 months before, because I was so nervous. And it wasn't until I didn't even want to say anything until like maybe a few days before. I wasn't going to do that. But I had a conversation with some of my colleagues, and they had said to me, well, Netta, this is the very work that you work on. And the organization is not like that. And they truly value you. So go ahead and share the good news. This is something that This is a moment in your life that you should be super proud about and not even worry, what the job has to say. I said, okay, now I'm going to do this. So I told my manager, and then I also told the CEO. They were so excited. I think even more excited than I was. A few weeks to a month later, I was promoted to VP.
Wow, the promotion kind of got sealed.
I got the promotion, and I'm like, what? So after I got the promotion, of course, I had to write a full article about it.
Oh, cool. I'll link that in the show notes.
Yeah. Just talk about if you know that you are really adding value to an organization. Don't ever be afraid to share the great things that are happening in your life for you. And don't be afraid of thinking, hey, you're going to lose out on an opportunity. Now, don't think the worst, because it may be, a real positive income. And I think, again, because of all the horror stories that I hear and that I read, I started getting afraid. And I knew that my company wasn't like that.
Yeah.
I knew. I mean, this is the work that I do, right? I focus on diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging. And so I know how the company operates. I wasn't the only. I think other people in the past as well have been promoted while they were pregnant and on leave. And the thing is we have great parental leave. We have about 4 to 6 months off. And that's a lot of time.
Incredible. Yeah.
Within 4 to 6 months, I've written a book, I've started a company, I've done like a whole bunch of things, right?
That story, it sounds like another powerful lesson in using your voice. So a lot of your work is around helping others find their voice, use their voice, become more included, make room for others. But then there's also, you're out practicing what you preach all the time, and you overcame the fear or the preconceptions about what this means if I share this information. And then when you do, lo and behold, like new doorways you didn't even plan on. Like this wasn't a strategy to get a promotion. This was like, you just want to be able to stay there. So how soon did you go on family leave after you got this promotion? Was it just like weeks or months?
Yeah, a month and a half after, or 2 months. It was pretty quick.
Incredible.
Pretty fast.
I coach many busy moms, and one of the things that I notice about busy parents in general, but especially with busy mommies, is that they're just very hard on themselves. Like they feel like they're stepping away from their family a lot, or they're pulling away from their work to go get their kids after school, whatever. What would you offer an aspiring mommy in the workplace who wants to develop her career and keep getting those promotions?
Build a network of support. Build a network of support because it's needed. I think a lot of women end up burning out and also suffer from deep postpartum because of the focus on just their children. And then also trying to find that balance, and they never get to focus on themselves and focus on themselves. And that's so important. If you're not right, then you can't be right for your children, and you can't be right for your company as well. So really make sure that you take care of you. And the only way that really can happen is if you have some support around you. So really making sure that you're using grandparents, friends, family members, husbands, partners, making sure to include as many people as possible, and taking that time out for yourself to reflect on what it is you want to do, what type of parent you want to be, the time that you can create for those things, for your children, your job, and for yourself. Do not leave yourself out. And I think when women leave themselves out, that's when everything starts breaking.
What would you offer that same woman who's kind of exploring those edges in an organization of just trying to understand what are her levels of support? Because one of my experiences in corporate was that we get a lot of stories spinning in our heads that kind of become limiting. Oh, they'll never go for this. I remember when I was evolving from a sales director into training and development, I had this story that, they're not going to want me to give up my $7 million sales goal or territory just to go into training. But then when I started having the conversations, they thought, oh my gosh, you're perfect for this. We need you. Thank you so much for thinking of this. What would you offer to people who need to kind of step beyond those stories? Because it sounds like that's what you needed to do in terms of stepping into more possibility in your new role.
You have to run through the fear, right? You're going to be fearful of making that step or communicating whatever the message is, but you have to do it. And I think also part of it is gaining buy-in from executive leadership, gaining buy-in from people that have real impact within organizations so that they understand what it is you're looking for and what you want to do. And also not being fearful of saying from the beginning, from your interview, the things that you're looking for, your path, from the beginning. I think a lot of times we go into organizations and we think, okay, I'll work hard, I'll put my head down, they'll understand, they'll get what I want to do, and I'll just ride this out. And then you don't see progression, you don't see change. You have to be very vocal about what you want from the beginning. And that's one of the things that I was always very vocal about, the next progression, the next step, what I wanted to do. Before I got into tech, I had my own company. So I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And I think that's how come I have like a strong PR and branding background and recruiting background as well. And so it was very key for me to share with my company that I'm an entrepreneur at heart. Here are some of these strategies and things that I think about.
Very clear vision of where you want to go, the willingness to share that from the beginning, even when you're nervous to do it or you feel like there's going to be pushback.
If it's hard to do, then find someone within the company that you're friends with that can motivate you, that can boost you up a bit. I've done that so many times. I've took friends in the conference room and we're both boosting each other up. I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm going to say in this meeting. What do you think? Okay, no, you should say this, right? And then you go in and you're killer. You're a killer in the meeting. So definitely the whole messaging today, I want to preach is support. Find that support. Don't do it alone.
This has been such a huge topic. At This Epic Life, we're exploring the power of community and how we kind of train ourselves and train other people to operate in this place of I got this all the time. And I got this is cool if it's confidence, but it has this point of diminishing returns where people start reaffirming that if it is to be, it's up to me. And that whole me thing, it becomes such a heavy weight to kind of be burdened by all the success and all the failures ride solely on you. What I'm hearing from you is there is no Netta without the mom and the mother-in-law and the husband and the mentors and the coaches and the
employees within my organization.
Yeah.
Even when it comes down to the line of work I do for Ask Applications and Mosaic Group, I'm looking to employees. I want to hear from them. I'm all about listening to people. I'm quick to listen and slow to talk. It's really key to do that when you're a leader in an organization.
As we start coming full circle here, we got to talk about the 3 permissions. We cover these with every guest. These are access points to our highest expression. These are the permission to chill. I'm defining this lately as to be with what is, to just relax and to be with what is, sometimes sitting in silence. The next is permission to feel all the feels, which is to be with our full humanity, to bring that to the table. Mm-hmm. And the third is to permission to glow in the dark, which is to be with our greatness. Which of these permissions resonate with you today, and or what do those permissions mean to you?
Glow in the dark is an amazing permission because the line of work that I do, there's a lot of inequality, a lot of systemic gaps, a lot of people hurting, a lot of people oppressed, a lot of different groups. It's not an exciting thing, right, to talk about all day long, to just have that on your heart or your mind or go to sleep with. But I think glowing in the dark, the cool part about it is me being able to create solutions, me being able to collaborate with people within the organization that are just as passionate about these efforts. When you hear that one person that really doesn't care, or bash some of the initiatives or don't really care about diversity and inclusion, you have a whole group of people that do care, that want to help, that are advocates, that are allies, that are sponsors. So glow in the dark really, really resonates for me. Even though the topics are not always exciting or the most glowing, the transformations, the solutions, the company that has came out of this has really been a glowing experience.
Where does that permission to glow in the dark originate for you? So say you have people around you that actively either resist or won't grant that. How do you cultivate that in yourself?
Part of it is taking time out, just sort of working on me, taking that silent time. So even if I'm in a room and I'm praying or just sleeping, sometimes sleep helps as well.
Yeah.
But I think that alone time really helps you to get centered. And it definitely helps me tremendously because, we're all humans at the end of the day. We all have feelings. And when you're passionate about something and you hear of certain people resisting, that it hurts. You're like,
Sure.
wait, how could you? You're right. Like, this is for the better. This is for all people. We should all be invested in this. And so sometimes I just have to take a step back and say, okay, well, let me relax. Let me do something that I love to do. Let me spend more time with my baby, with my husband, with my family, really start looking at other things and then step back into it.
You'll love this. There's this model I learned last year called the infinity triangle. It's got a badass name.
Yeah.
It's an equilateral triangle. On the top corner, it's divinity or God. On the left corner, it's self, like being self-directed. And then on the far right corner is others. The model is that a balanced life is equally sourced from all three corners, from divinity, from self, and from others. And I just heard you describe the most perfectly balanced approach to this because, let's face it, having a baby at home is kind of crazy. It can be intense at times. Starting a company, kind of crazy. Being an advocate in a broken world at the moment can be kind of crazy. But you do it with such grace and with swagger because you're willing to be sourced from all those areas. You give yourself permission to chill and to be with yourself and to hear the inner voice.
Thank you. Thank you.
What can my listenership do for you or your work? Where's the best place to find you? What would be the most helpful place for them to check out and to support?
So I do have a website. I try to blog as often as I can. So that's www.nettajenkins.com. I also have a book coming out, and I'm still working on the title, but it should be out in a couple months.
You said the focus of that is women empowerment?
Definitely women empowerment. So talking about negotiations, talking about really next level for women, not comparing men and women so much, but more so what do women need to do to get to make it to the next level in their career.
You're so enrolling in this conversation. I kind of want to be an empowered woman right now. Are you okay with that? Can I try?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, do it. And then one more thing,
Yeah.
Definitely encourage folks to check out ourdipper.com and leave your reviews.
Oh, Our Dipper, yeah. To see that out in the world garnering so many reviews right now, it just shows how needed it is. But yeah, again, thanks for bringing that into manifestation. That's killer.
Of course, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for spending your time with me today. It's always great catching up. Thanks for being so unstoppable, even on family leave. It just inspires me to make the most out of even downtime and family time. So thanks for all you're doing.
Thank you for this awesome podcast, and also thank you for all the coaching and just working with me, from the beginning when I had just started. And I thank you for sticking by me. Look at this, right? Years later.
And thanks so much to all of you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode and you got a lot out of it, please share it with somebody who you think may benefit, or share it on social media like Facebook or LinkedIn. Pop over to iTunes and leave us a review because your feedback is so important at this early stage of our show development.